Welcome to Dashing Dish. Oftentimes when we think of comfort food, we think of anything but healthy. But today I'm going to show you how to make some healthy spins on all of my favorites that remind me of home. And it wouldn't be home without having Sean and my sister Emily with me as we prepare some of our childhood favorites. Creamy chicken pot pie with Homestyle biscuits that give you that warm Sunday dinner feel. And delicious hearty mac and cheese with decadent chocolate cake for two. There's something about comfort food that just makes me feel at home. So today's all about comfort food, and when I asked the Dashing Dish community, what do you think of when you think of comfort food? The overwhelming response was some sort of chicken pot pie with biscuits. And I couldn't agree more, so today we're gonna make a really simple chicken pot pie with homemade biscuits, all ready in under about 35 minutes. So you'll be blown away at how easy this is. So I just sprayed a saute pan with cooking spray and then diced up some celery and some onion and added 1/2 cup of chicken stock to the pan. And really all I did was just let the celery and the onion cook down and get tender. So that's what the chicken stock is for, is to kind of help the celery break down, because you don't want to take a bite into a really hard piece of celery. So you just want it to get nice and soft. Then, really simple shortcut, I have 2 cups of carrots and peas that were frozen, and I just de-thawed them in the microwave for about 30 seconds. You could also just add them straight to the pan and de-thaw them there. And that looks like a good base to our chicken pot pie filling. And it already smells so good. And then I'm gonna do 1/2 teaspoon of thyme. Now thyme is a really popular seasoning to use in holiday recipes. So a lot of times when you think of comfort food, it brings you back to times that you just really enjoyed yourself. You were usually with family and friends and you just felt cozy and at home. And so a lot of times, for most of us, that's the holidays, that's special occasions with family and friends, and also birthdays. So I think that's why when we think about comfort food, we do think of casseroles and warm, hearty dishes that we think of Thanksgiving and holidays that we attend. So then to this, I'm gonna add 1/4 cup of oat flour. And this is a really good swap out. When I think about comfort food and I think of creamy sauces, a lot of times in order to make a creamy sauce, we have to make something called a roux, which is basically white flour and butter. But instead of using white flour, we're just using 1/4 cup of oat flour, so it's a whole grain and much better for you. And you won't even notice the difference or that anything has changed from the white flour. So I'm just adding that, and what this does is makes a nice thick sauce when we add it to the veggies. So we're just gonna coat all the veggies in this oat flour. We're gonna kind of stir it around, and you just wanna let it cook for about a minute in the pan. Just enough to kind of cook that oat flour through and get all the veggies coated. Then I'm gonna add 2 cups of almond milk, but you can add any kind of milk that you like. And then we have 1/2 cup of chicken stock. So once we add both of these liquids and we turn up the heat just a little bit, you'll see how it starts to thicken up pretty quickly. So now I'm gonna add my 2 cups of cooked chicken. And I'm just gonna stir that in. And then now that it's boiling, I'm gonna turn the heat down to a simmer. And we'll let this continue to thicken. And when we come back, my sister's gonna be joining me to make the biscuits that are absolutely easy and delicious to top this filling off with, and then we'll bake it. I have so many memories of being with my mom in the kitchen over the years. Although she is the first to admit she doesn't necessarily love to cook, she was always really involved when it came to establishing special traditions with food. I will always hold my childhood memories close to my heart with my mom. But what blesses me even more are the memories I now get to see with my mom making with Maddie. This past holiday season was the first time all of the grandkids were finally old enough to help in the kitchen. We broke out all of the cookie cutters that we used as kids, and my mom taught our kids how to decorate the cookies. There was something so special about that moment, and as simple as it may seem, it made my heart feel at home. I guess that's why they call the kitchen the heart of the home. Not only is it a place where we get to prepare and eat meals, the kitchen is where family guests gather, socialize, and fellowship with one another. Nothing says comfort food like chicken pot pie with homemade biscuits, and we're making a clean eating gluten-free version today in under 30 minutes. So I'm gonna make the biscuits to go with our filling that we just made, and I just put the filling into a 9x13 baking dish, and we're gonna make the biscuits, put them right on top, stick it in the oven. So simple. So I'm gonna have you add to the bowl, we're gonna just make the biscuit filling right here, 1 cup of plain Greek yogurt, and that kind of swaps out butter or oil in a recipe when it comes to making biscuits a little bit healthier, and it adds some protein, which is nice. And then 1 cup of cheese, and you might be thinking, cheese, that's interesting, but it just adds a lot of flavor. If you don't really like cheese, you really can't taste it in there. It just adds a nice salty flavor and also some moisture. And then I'm gonna add 1/2 cup of almond flour, and that adds a little bit of nuttiness to these biscuits and also some moisture because it's a healthy fat with the almonds. And almond flour is just basically almonds that are ground into a flour. And then 1½ cup of oat flour. And oat flour is just old-fashioned oats ground into a flour, so much better for you than white flour.
So reminds me of our childhood when Mom used to make chicken pot pie, but a healthier version.
Yes. And then I'll have you add 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda and 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and that just makes the biscuits fluffy and also rise. So Emma, I was gonna ask you, speaking of our childhood and comfort food, what really reminds you of, you know, our childhood when it comes to food?
Definitely macaroni and cheese, chicken pot pie, French bread pizzas.
French bread pizzas.
Yes. But what I love most about chicken pot pie is like the smell. Like it just reminds me of Mom.
It's true.
And of warmth. You know, it's something you make in the fall or the winter, just the warm smell. So that's why I love it.
It's true. It's amazing how smells can really bring us back to certain memories and times in our lives, and how it can really make us feel at home. And I think the thyme in the chicken pot pie filling is a really strong smell when you bake it. And often it reminds me of Thanksgiving as well. So. All right, so this is coming together. You just want to stir it until it forms a nice dough for you. So that's looking pretty good there.
It's crazy you can make your own biscuits that easily.
I know, so easy.
Like 3
We didn't
ingredients.
have to wait for them to rise. You didn't have to buy the canned stuff. I mean, it really is just putting a few ingredients into a bowl, stirring it, and then we're gonna just lightly roll it out. And this is my secret for really easy rolling when it comes to cookies or biscuits or any kind of dough, is putting it between 2 pieces of parchment paper.
Smart.
Because then you don't even really have to get your rolling pin dirty. It just kind of keeps everything clean on your countertops, and it prevents sticking too, which is nice. So we're just gonna get that out onto the parchment paper as best as we can there.
I love that you added cheese. Can you do this without cheese?
Yeah, I mean, technically you could swap it out for more oat flour or almond flour, so a different kind of flour. But again, you can't really taste, it doesn't taste cheesy necessarily, it just adds a different depth of flavor for these biscuits. Now, there's 2 different ways you could cut out these biscuits. If you have a circle cookie cutter, that works perfect. But if you don't have one at home, then what you can do is you can either use a mason jar lid or top, like I have here, or just a mason jar and just cut out the circles. So you want to roll it out.
How thick do you want this?
Yep, that's perfect. About 1/8 of an inch, I'd say. So just so that you can cut 6 biscuits out, really. So Em, I'll give you the cookie cutter and then I'll do the mason jar lid. So we're just gonna kind of lay these on top. There's no rhyme or reason of how they need to be, but we're making about 6 biscuits out of this dough. So we're gonna kind of lay them on top. So you'll want gaps in your filling so that it gets bubbly and the biscuits get lightly golden brown.
So this is nice because each person gets their own biscuit if you get 6 servings out of that.
Yeah, so, and it is 6 servings technically, but you could also stretch it as far as 8 because it's a lot of filling. Now, if you have extra dough, then what you could do is you can just continue to cut this dough out and put it onto a baking pan and just stick it in the oven rack right under your baking dish here. And then you can bake them alongside the pot pie. And who doesn't love extra biscuits to go along with their pot pie filling? We'll bake this at 350 degrees for about 25 minutes until the filling is nice and bubbly and the biscuits are lightly golden brown. When we think about comfort food, it's rare that healthy food comes to mind. Here are a few simple swaps you can make. When cooking, I like to use Greek yogurt in place of heavy cream and butter. When it comes to thickening sauces, oat flour is a great alternative to white flour. And last but not least, flavorful spices and cheeses, such as Parmesan, add a lot of flavor without adding extra calories when it comes to making sauces. Coming up next, Sean will be joining me to make his favorites: creamy, hearty mac and cheese, and a chocolate cake for 2 that you would never guess is healthy. It's all about comfort food here in the kitchen today, and the one that makes me feel the most comfort is joining me, my husband, Sean, and we're gonna make his absolute favorite comfort food. Can you guess what it is?
I think by the ingredients, it looks like mac and cheese.
Yeah, we're gonna make a healthy, gluten-free baked mac and cheese, and it's so simple, you'll never buy the box kind again. I can guarantee you that. So we're gonna start by making the cheese sauce. We already boiled some noodles, so you just wanna check whatever kind of noodles you use for this recipe, the box, how long to boil them for. About 5 to 8 minutes, depending on what kind you use. And then just rinse them with cold water, and that stops the cooking process so that they won't get overcooked when you add them to a warm sauce. So to start the sauce, I'm gonna do 1 tablespoon of a good oil. So I like avocado oil or olive oil for this recipe. And then to that, I'm gonna add my oat flour. So I'm gonna add 1/4 cup of oat flour. And you've seen this a lot today, and oat flour is a really good swap out for any time you use white flour when you're making a sauce or you're trying to thicken a sauce. You can just grab the oat flour. It'll work the same as white flour, but it's much better for you. Then I'll do 1 teaspoon of minced garlic. And I'm just gonna kind of whisk that together in the oil. Now, oftentimes I don't use oil in recipes, but if you need to add a tablespoon here or there, so just to kind of cook off this flour, it's absolutely okay. In fact, a little bit of healthy fat in our diets is good for us. So 1 tablespoon just to kind of brown off this flour is perfect. So you can see I was just kind of cooking the garlic through and the flour through in the bottom of the pan there. Then I'm gonna have you add 3 cups of almond milk, but you could do any kind of milk that you like for this
pour
recipe.
Right in?
Yep.
Okay.
Just slowly kind of pour it in. Yep, there you go, perfect. And then once you add your milk, you're gonna wanna start to whisk. And what's gonna happen is you're gonna see that the milk starts to thicken up with that oat flour. So I'm gonna whisk it and I'm gonna turn the heat up to medium high. Then Sean, I'll have you add the 2 cups of cheddar cheese.
Okay.
Perfect. And then we have 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese. So you could really use different kinds of cheeses and swap them out as you like for this recipe, but I like the classic cheddar cheese, and then the Parmesan adds a nice salty bite to it. We're gonna stir that in, and then I'm gonna have you add some seasonings.
Okay.
So we don't need a whole lot of salt for this recipe because we just did Parmesan cheese, which adds a really salty flavor. So 1/2 teaspoon of salt is all you need.
Okay.
And then we're gonna do 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder.
Okay.
And
This
here.
one?
Yep, that's
Okay.
garlic powder. And then 1/4 teaspoon of paprika. You could also do a dry mustard powder or really anything that you like in your mac and cheese. But just a little bit of garlic powder, salt, paprika is enough to really give it some bold flavors. So I'm gonna continue to kind of stir that slowly until a thick cheese sauce forms. So Sean, I wanna ask you, when you think of comfort food, what comes to mind?
Definitely mac and cheese.
Yeah.
Pizza, even though it's not really a comfort food, but it's my comfort food.
Yeah.
Chicken nuggets.
So all the things that he had from his childhood.
Yes.
And that's what we were saying today is that for the most part, when it comes to anything that is a comfort food, oftentimes it's because it brings us back to memories of our childhood or our past or really fun times that we can remember being with family and friends.
Yeah.
All right, so this looks like it's thickened up nicely, so I'm just gonna turn down the heat. And how you know is if it coats the back of a spoon nicely. So if you kind of roll your spoon through it and it has a nice coating on there, that's how you know it's ready.
That's a good tip.
And if you find that it has lumps or chunks, you just wanna keep whisking out that oat flour until it kind of breaks down. So now we're ready to add our pasta.
Okay.
So we have 1 pound of cooked pasta. You can use any kind that you like. I like brown rice pasta. Sean and Maddie love it as well. So how does that look to you, Sean?
It looks really good.
And what's your absolute favorite comfort food when it comes to something that reminds you of your mom? Something that she makes?
She always made meatloaf when I was a kid, and I haven't thought about that in a while, but that was actually one of the meals that I remember her making for all of us that we all enjoyed. So.
Yeah, this looks perfect. If you add too much pasta, you can always add a little bit of milk or a little cheese just to kind of break it up and thin it out a little bit. So Sean, I'm gonna have you lift this heavy dish,
Okay.
and I'll scrape it out into this
lift
pan.
this?
No, this one.
Okay.
So it's hot, so let me grab
Okay.
another oven mitt. So, and I'll scrape it out. So I'll just have
Okay.
you kind of tip it like this. And if you don't have a big, strong husband here to help you do this part, call one of your neighbors and then tell them you'll give them mac and cheese. I guarantee you'll make new friends. So we have a 13 by 9 pan here, and I'm just gonna kind of dish it into there. And that looks absolutely delicious. It smells good too, doesn't it?
Smells really good. Smells like garlic.
And it will continue to thicken up a little bit in the oven as well. And so I'm gonna top it off with, you could either do breadcrumbs here if you like a crunchy topping, but Sean likes it really cheesy and melty, don't ya? So I'm gonna do a little bit more shredded cheese, about a 1/2 cup there. And then I'm just gonna pop this in the oven. It's already cooked through, so you just wanna kind of melt everything together and do a golden brown topping if you have breadcrumbs, or melt the cheese on top. So 425 degrees for about 15 to 20 minutes will be perfect. And then it'll be time to eat.
Can't wait.
Thanks for making it with me. Growing up with 2 sisters that were pretty outspoken, I typically took on the more quiet role, and I was okay with letting them shine. Throughout my childhood, many people labeled me as shy, and it didn't take long before I accepted that as truth. Although there isn't necessarily anything wrong with being more quiet, I believed that being shy made me inferior, and it discouraged me from trying many new things. I have worked with countless women over the years, and I've come to learn that every detail that God places in each one of us is so specific, and it equips us for the call that He has on our lives. Yet many of those traits are to be refined by Him before the rough edges can be made smooth. Isaiah 64:8 compares our lives to a lump of clay that is being shaped into a masterpiece when we submit to the Master's hands. This truth can bring us great comfort as we learn that we don't have to have it all figured out before we can be used by Him. Rather, we can let the potter's hands shape us, and He will make the rough places smooth and form us into vessels that can be greatly used by Him. Nothing says comfort food like chocolate cake, especially homemade chocolate cake. Now, what I like to do when I make any kind of cake is to portion it out into little mini servings. And so what's better than chocolate cake for 2? So I'm gonna start by making my chocolate cake batter. I'm gonna do 1/4 cup of cocoa powder, 1/3 cup of peanut flour. Then I'm gonna do 1/4 cup of monk fruit sweetener, And then I'll add the wet ingredients. So I have 1/4 cup of plain Greek yogurt. And then 1/4 cup of almond milk, so just like a cake batter, but just a smaller portion. And you just add this all to a small or medium-sized bowl. And then 1/8 teaspoon of salt. And then just 1 egg. So incredibly simple. And actually, when I was thinking about what kind of sweet treat to make for this recipe, I asked my husband Sean, I said, when you think of comfort food and you think about sweets, what comes to mind? And I asked him, but I pretty much knew the answer was chocolate cake, because every single year for his birthday, he only asks for one thing, and that's a chocolate cake. So I'm just gonna stir this until the egg is mixed in and all the lumps are pretty much out. There you go, that looks good. And then I'm gonna spray 2 small bowls, but you could also do 2 mugs for this. So really, anything that you can pop into the microwave that is heat safe. So these are just 2 Pyrex dishes, so I can put them in the microwave and they'll be good to go. And I'm gonna spray 2 small bowls with cooking spray. And then you just wanna divide the batter between the 2 bowls. And I like to use a mini spatula to make sure I get all of that chocolate goodness out. I'm gonna pop these in the microwave for 90 seconds, and then I'll top them off with the whipped cream. Coming up next, Sean and Emily join me as we taste our comfort foods made healthy. Who knew that you could have the best of both worlds?
The recipes from today's program are available at dashingdish.com with thousands of delicious, clean eating recipes, hundreds of easy-to-follow workouts, plus a custom grocery list and meal planning tools. There's plenty to love about the Dashing Dish membership. Start your free 2-week trial today using code CTVN at checkout. Find everything you need for your journey to health with a Dashing Dish membership. Use code CTVN at checkout and start your free 2-week trial today.
Are you walking through a difficult season of life and in need of comfort? All of us will walk through storms, yet even when we do, we can take comfort knowing that we are never alone. John 14:26 tells us that God's Spirit has been sent to every believer to be their comforter, counselor, advocate, and standby. He also gives us His Word to light the way for us even in the darkest nights. He promises to be close to us in our times of trouble. Well, I hope that these recipes made you feel like you had a little piece of our home today. And for more recipes that make you feel like you're getting your comfort food at home in a healthy way, head over to dashingdish.com, where we give you recipes and more to nourish your body and soul.